What's going on, Ohio State fans? Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. We are going to have content and coverage detailing the Ohio State playoff run, as well as recruiting, of course, as well. We're on the heels of the early signing day. We covered that last week, so plenty of recruiting stuff to discuss as well. Our next goal here at the channel is hitting 7,000 subscribers, and we are approaching that, only 465 subs away from making that happen. So don't miss out on any of our Ohio State football coverage here at the Ohio State Football Report. Hit that sub button right now. What's going on, Buckeye fans? Stone Shields on hand for the Ohio State Football Report. And on today's edition of the Ohio State Football Report, we are going to be previewing this round one matchup in the college football playoffs between your Ohio State Buckeyes and the Tennessee Volunteers, taking place at the Shoe. So, of course, Ohio State loses in heartbreaking fashion to Michigan, but they still get to host a playoff game, something that probably wouldn't have happened, by the way. If they were to beat Michigan, perhaps maybe win the Big Ten, they wouldn't be hosting a home playoff game. So a chance for a little redemption in Columbus, taking on a very talented Tennessee Volunteer football team, and what I believe is the best matchup out of any of the round one games here in the college football playoff. So before we kind of dive into that and detail this preview here and give my thoughts on that, let's just run through here the top 25 that the committee came to a conclusion of earlier today, just really an hour or so ago. So let's go 25-1 here. Memphis at that 25 spot, UNLV at 24. Colorado, Deion Sanders at that 23 spot. Really a phenomenal year for them. I think they certainly had expectations of getting to the playoff there after they got off to that hot start. Kind of slipped up there coming down the stretch, but nonetheless, I would consider it a successful season for Coach Prime in Colorado. Army, another quality showing this year. 22, Syracuse at number 21. We keep it moving here with Illinois, of course, a Big Ten school. At that 20 spot, Missouri of the SEC at 19. Iowa State, after they got waxed in their conference championship game yesterday. BYU at 17, and then Clemson at 16, who, by the way, are that first team that gets into the college football playoff as far as the highest-ranked team. Clemson gets in after their victory last night. South Carolina at that 15 spot. Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss Rebels at 14. Miami, the Hurricanes. I think if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, you're a little beat up right now, considering that you are on the outside looking in, not getting in to this 12-team playoff. Arizona State gets a first-round bye. We'll detail the bracket here in a moment. They are in. The Crimson Tide of Alabama are out. I don't think you can expect a 3-loss team to get in, but I think we all know who would be favored if the Crimson Tide were to take on the SMU Mustangs in a theoretical matchup, which leads us to our number 10 team. SMU gets in. They'll play Penn State. Boise State, number 3 seed, they're going to get a bye as well. Indiana is in. They will face off in the state of Indiana against Notre Dame. Should be a quality game as well. And there you have it at 6 and 7. The Ohio State Buckeyes and Tennessee Volunteers should be a banger of a matchup in December at the end of the month. Notre Dame at 5, of course, not a part of a conference. Penn State had a really strong showing despite the loss in the Big Ten title game against Oregon. Texas at 3. Georgia at 2, and the Oregon Ducks, really the clear-cut number 1 overall seed with their unblemished record. Let's take a look exactly at what exactly this bracket looks like here at this point in time. Boy, if you're the Ohio State Buckeyes, that is absolutely a gauntlet. But I think that's a good thing for Ohio State coming off of that embarrassing loss to Michigan. If you want to really right the ship here and go win a national title, you want it to be the hardest road possible. And let me tell you, if you beat Tennessee, and then you beat Oregon, and then theoretically you beat Texas if they take care of business, and then perhaps square off against Georgia perhaps in the national title game, nobody can dispute your season if you rattle off those kinds of wins. Obviously, it might not end up being Texas and Georgia. They could get upset, but regardless, you got to go Tennessee, and then if you win Oregon, and that by a long stretch is the hardest possible start you could have here in the college football playoffs. Leads us to the pinned comment of today's video. What is your one-word reaction to Ohio State seating there at that 8th spot? I think mine would just be fine. That's fine. It's kind of what you expected. You were really just going to be 7, 8, or 9 at that point. You get the 8 seed, and you have an opportunity to host a game at the Shoe, which obviously is a nice position to kind of bounce back after that loss to Michigan. But regardless, sound off for us in the pinned comment of today's video. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comment section and let us know what you think. All right, let's kind of breeze through how we got to this point as far as the Ohio State Buckeyes go. Obviously, the first 3 weeks, you didn't play anybody. You looked good in spots. You took care of business. You had a Jaden Fielding bad game in there. Remember that game where you kicked like 3 balls out of bounds on kickoffs? Unfortunately for Ohio State, that was a sign of things to come later in the year, and that kind of reared its ugly head in that Michigan game. But you go to East Lansing, your first road game of the season, take care of the Spartans 38-17. Then you play some good football at home against Iowa, big win 35-7. Then you have that Oregon loss where you really played pretty solid for a good portion of that game, but really it just became obvious there at the end that you didn't have the better quarterback and you didn't have the better head coach. And I think that ultimately is what propelled Oregon to a victory in that game. Nebraska, you survive at home, right? That certainly was a very difficult game. Had no success running the football, and you kind of stayed, kind of were a little stubborn with it, stayed with it probably a little bit too long, but you get a victory against Dylan Raiola, Matt Rule, and the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and then a really solid win against Penn State, a game in which you really just bullied the Penn State Nittany Lions, something you've really done against that team for as long as I can remember, to be completely honest with you. That was a big win on the road and in Happy Valley for your football team. And then from there, you didn't really play any, but Purdue Northwestern having down seasons. You took care of business there. You had the game in Wrigley Field, which was kind of fun there, taking on the Northwestern Wildcats. Indiana and Coach Sig. The weather kind of got a little bit sloppy, and you really had some big plays on special teams, some gaffes really from the Hoosiers in that game. You got a victory, so it was a big win for you. Top 5 win. And then, of course, we all know what happened that last game of the year. Devastating, heartbreaking fashion. Just laid an egg against Michigan out of your 4 consecutive losses to the Wolverines. This one clearly is your worst, given the fact that Michigan just isn't a good football team this year. We'll take a look at Tennessee's season and how they got there here in a moment. But first, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. They also invented the flex play. This is kind of what we threw together here at our chat sports offices here for Monday Night Football, Cowboys and Bengals. Going with the more than on CeeDee Lamb receiving yards. Hopefully he is going to be good to go. Had that shoulder issue, but he is off the injury report. Should be a good sign for Dallas. Also the more than for Chase Brown. Rushing yards. Look, Chase Brown has showed an ability to run the football, but Cincinnati in recent weeks has just always fallen behind, and they've had to abandon the run game. But I like Chase Brown going more than on the rush yards, as well as Rico Dowdle as well. That Bengals defense is absolutely awful. That is the flex play. I would really encourage you guys check that out. Essentially, you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's PrizePicks. Run your game, and that link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. All right, we'll go a little bit quicker here, taking a look at exactly how Tennessee got here. I tell you what, those first 3 games of the year, they looked absolutely unbelievable. But take a look at who they played. Chattanooga, NC State, and Kent State. They were lighting the world on fire. I thought they were going to be a team that was coming for the national title, which, of course, they still could be that team. But then they cooled off. We didn't know Oklahoma was as bad as they were there, but they took care of business there. But then they played Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks and didn't play well offensively. Lost that game 19-14. Struggled against Billy Napier's Florida Gators team. Took them to overtime. Got the win. But then got their biggest win of the season at home against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Certainly not a Nick Saban coach Alabama Crimson Tide. But regardless, it is still Bama. Big win from them. And then they were able to defeat Kentucky as well. String another good win together. Beating Mississippi State again. Not a really good football team. And I think the Volunteers would have liked to see themselves compete a little bit better against Georgia. Kind of got smacked around in that game. UTEP, you won your cupcake game. Nice job. And then finished the season strong, though, beating Vandy, a much better Vandy team than we, of course, are accustomed to seeing. Vandy, of course, knocked off the Crimson Tide, so Vandy had a solid year, and Tennessee really dominated that football game and was a good end to their season. All right, another opportunity for you guys to get interactive with our show here at the Ohio State Football Report. Who you got in this round one game of the college football playoffs? Type O for Ohio State or T for Tennessee. I want to know what you guys think. Get down in the comment section and be honest with us. All right, so this Ohio State football team, I tell you what, man, they got talent all over the place, which is kind of why the fan base has been so frustrated, right? Because they've just underachieved this year and in years past, but the talent is always there. The recruiting is always there. Look at the defense playing really well this year for the Buckeyes. First overall in total defense when it comes to the country. That's absolutely awesome. Scoring defense, first overall as well. A lot of those guys came back, and they're having some really good years for Jim Knowles there on the defensive side of the football. Defense going to be crucial in this game against an SEC opponent in Tennessee. Tennessee's also had a really solid season as well. Again, once they started out so hot, I kind of had higher expectations for the things that they were able to achieve this year. But again, they do have a big win, taking down the Alabama Crimson Tide. They took care of their in-state rival, Vandy, at the end of the year and played really well in that football game. Again, I think they would have liked to compete a little bit better against Georgia, but I think this is an absolute banger of a matchup. And it really, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I think this is the best game out of any of the round one games in the playoffs. The quarterback matchup certainly going to be something to keep an eye on in this football game. Look, Will Howard has been in a spot where he's really done a lot of the stuff that Ryan Day has asked of him, but he really could not deliver when they needed him against Michigan. And I think you kind of saw just exactly how much Ryan Day and Chip Kelly trust Will Howard, or lack thereof, essentially, because they, with the way that they were calling plays in that game against Michigan, it was very, very conservative. Look, they're going to have to lean on Will Howard if they want to make a run in these playoffs, because they have to get the ball to their star receivers. There is absolutely no doubt about that. As far as Iamaleava on the other side for Tennessee, I think this kid is really, really good. Redshirt freshman, had a solid year. I think he's got a really, really bright future. He throws a beautiful ball, and I think he does a nice job making good decisions in the pocket as well. And he's a guy that I think is probably going to have the slight advantage over Will Howard in this football game, despite being a redshirt freshman. I would give that quarterback advantage to Tennessee in this one, but we will see how that exactly pans out later in the month. Let us know who is the better quarterback in this matchup. Type WH for Will Howard or NI for Nico Iamaleava. Sound off for us in the comments of today's video. Here's what Nico did against Alabama. We're going to be taking a look at some of these stats here from the Bama game, because I think that was obviously their biggest win of the season if you're the Tennessee Volunteers. Again, didn't light up the stat sheet. If you guys remember that game, that was a really, really sloppy football game. Alabama was playing really sloppy as well. At the end of the day, Tennessee was just able to be a little bit less sloppy, a little bit more buttoned up, and that's what ultimately propelled them to winning that football game. I think Dylan Sampson certainly is their best player. If Tennessee has an ability to run the football on Ohio State, which, by the way, Michigan was able to run the football on them once again, I think that presents a lot of challenges for Ohio State. And that could be a real strength of this Tennessee football team. If Ohio State can slow down that guy right there, Dylan Sampson, I think they're going to win. If not, I might give the edge to Tennessee. But that guy right there is the difference maker, in my opinion, in this football game. Taking a look at some players to watch here for Ohio State. Look, you have to get the ball to your weapons. They failed to do that against Michigan. Jeremiah Smith, the freshman sensation, he had one-on-one opportunities that whole second half, and you didn't throw him the football, which is absolutely insane. This guy is going to be a household name if he isn't already. This guy's going to be a star in the NFL, and he still has to play college ball for 2 more seasons. You have to find ways to create playmaking opportunities for him and get the ball in his hands. If you're Ryan Day, he needs to touch the ball early and often in this game. Ibuka as well. Gotta utilize your receivers. And if you don't trust your quarterback, gotta find easy ways, easy completions to get these guys the ball in space. Threw G. Scott Jr. on there as well, because I feel like in these big games, playoff games, you see tight ends step up for Ohio State in a lot of these spots. How many times do we see Cave Stover step up in recent years there? G. Scott Jr. is a guy that's been around for a long time, has stuck it out here in Ohio State. He's had an opportunity this year to do some good things, and he's really shined for them. Caleb Downs, I think, is their best player on their roster. He is a big game player as well, so I'm looking for him to have a massive game here as he eyes a little bit of redemption as well. He, of course, lost to Michigan as a member of the Crimson Tide last year, so he's got 2 losses to them. He's going to be fired up and ready to go. And also Jack Sawyer. Let's just keep it 100 here, keep it real. Jack Sawyer embarrassed himself and the program at the end of that Michigan game with the way he handled himself. He looked very soft and very immature, quite frankly. And this is a guy that stuck around and wanted to come back here to give it all he had with his teammates. And he's going to have an opportunity here to right the ship one final time by making a playoff run here in 2024. Obviously, beating Michigan was a goal of his. That did not end up happening. But again, they go on this run, beat all the good teams that are in front of them. You cannot count out these Ohio State Buckeyes, and you have to give them their credit if they are able to pull it off. Jack Sawyer needs to have a good football game in this one. Taking a look at the other side of things, mention Nico and Dylan Sampson as well. Those are their 2 mainstays on offense, along with Squirrel White, who's been a solid receiver for Tennessee for a while now. But those guys on the defensive line, James Pierce Jr. and Bryson Eason, are guys that I'm really looking at to have a good, impactful game. James Pierce Jr. is a guy that's going to be a difference maker at the next level as well. So they're going to have a plan for him. They got to do a good job protecting Will Howard in this game so he can get the football out and get it to his playmakers. All right, before we get out of here, make sure you get your score predictions in. Predict the score of Ohio State versus Tennessee. Be honest with us. You confident Ohio State is going to get the job done and get a rematch with Oregon? Sound off for us. Get your score predictions into the comment section right now.